Today we have a special guest on the podcast, Kesha Williams, an award-winning software engineer. She's worked on top secret projects for the US government, worked for AWS, had award-winning TED Talks, over 88 publications out, and sits on the board for several women's groups. So Kesha, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you for joining. Again, it does mean a lot to us. Very appreciative of having you in. Knowledge Finder really welcome the representation, and I think we all want to see more Black women within tech and at the higher levels of tech. So
do I.
We have you here today to be a clear example of how it's done and what can be achieved when you apply yourself. So firstly, I would like to start with a bit about yourself and just how you grew up and started your career journey.
Sure. So I've been in tech for 26 years. So it's a pretty long journey. So I will start from the beginning up to today's date.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of fell into tech at a very young age without even realizing that I was in tech. So I was maybe in the 10th grade of high school, and my father purchased a personal computer, and he put that in a room that was my playroom, but also his office. So like in one corner, I had Barbie dolls and all these toys, and in the other corner, my dad had this computer. And so the computer was in my playroom, so I started playing on the computer. And so there was a manual, and I read through the manual, and at the back, it had programs written in the basic programming language. And so I started playing on the computer and writing basic code. So at that time, I didn't even realize that what I was doing was called coding. I didn't realize that until later. And so that was like the 9th or 10th grade. And then in the 11th grade, my father sent me away to a summer science enrichment training program at a local college. And for me, you know, being in middle school, being in high school, being so young, this was my first time away from home, and I was on a college campus. So I can definitely say it was a very fun experience. They exposed me to chemistry and computer science. And it was really at that point that I realized how much I loved computers, and I knew that there was nothing else that I wanted to do with my life. And so when it was time for me to go away to college and leave home, it was an easy choice for me to pick computer science. And I left home and I came to, so I grew up in South Carolina. So I moved to a different state. I'm currently in Georgia, and I attended Spelman College. And there I majored in computer science and math. And at first it was really hard. Like freshman year, I thought to myself, what in the world did I get myself into? Because what they're teaching me is not what I was doing. It's not my playing around. Like this stuff is really hard. I don't know if I can do it. So like freshman year, I had this moment where I was thinking like, this is not for me. But then I thought about it like, well, what else are you going to do? Like, there's nothing else you enjoy. I don't want to do business. I don't want to do chemistry. I don't want to be a lawyer. And so I decided to stick it out. And I'm glad I did. Looking back, it was really one of the best choices I made. And so once I guess that was junior year, I had an internship. And that was my internship with the National Security Agency. And yeah, I can't tell you what I did there. If I did, I'd have to track you down and kill you. But that was my first introduction to like the real world in computer science. And there I just did technology related things like building websites, translating paper documents to electronic format. And that just really got me excited about web development. So there I was introduced to HTML, and CSS wasn't out back then, but it was just HTML. And then that really was my entry point into web development. So when I graduated from college, I started working in the healthcare industry doing web development. And back then I started with Microsoft technologies. So back then it was called Active Server Pages and ActiveX. Now it's called .NET. So I started that way. And then this shows you how long I've been in the industry. I remember when the Java programming language came out.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, when I researched this language, I'm like, this is really cool. It's like you write it once, it runs everywhere. I really think this language is going to take over the world. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do. And so I actually had to leave the organization where I was working because they didn't have any opportunities for me to grow in that area. And so I took a leap of faith and I started working for Delta Airlines. And there I was able to really learn about Java because they gave us on-the-job training because the language was so new, no one knew it. And so there I worked on the booking engine of Delta.com. So if you've ever gone on the Delta.com website and you've purchased a ticket, you're working on code that I helped to develop. It was a really fun project. Wow. And then after that, I decided to leave Delta because it was a point, I guess, where they were being threatened by low-cost carriers. So airlines that would come in and give, I guess, greatly reduced travel rates to customers. And so they were losing a lot of business and they thought that they were going to go bankrupt. And so because of that, they laid off all of their low performers. So I was left there doing my job and really the jobs of the people that they laid off. And then they were instituting a pay cut. And I was like, okay, like I have a family to take care of. So you're going to give me double the work and then cut my pay? I'm like, something is not right about this.
That's not a good equation at all.
Yeah, no way. And so I decided to leave. And I'm glad I left when I did, because after that, they instituted 2 more pay cuts. And so I had really planned on retiring from Delta. So it was a big step for me to actually leave. And I left and I started doing contract work. I just said, I'm never going to work full time for a company again. I'm just going to hop from contract to contract within Atlanta, just doing Java web development. And so my first 3-month contract position with no healthcare benefits, nothing. Everybody thought I was crazy for leaving a full-time job to do that. Yeah. I contracted for a company called Chick-fil-A. And after the 3 months, they actually offered me a full-time position. And I accepted it because it was a great company. They had great benefits. They had like on-site childcare. The healthcare was 100% covered. And so I'm like, this is a great company. And so I stayed there for 14 years. And I just really worked my way up from a Java contractor to a full-time Java developer to leading a team of software engineers. Developing Java solutions on AWS, Amazon Web Services, so in the cloud. And like I said, I did that for 14 years. I enjoyed it. But then I reached a point where I really enjoyed teaching and mentoring. So on the side, while still working at Chick-fil-A, I authored online tech courses for platforms like Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning, Udacity, A Cloud Guru, and I really, really loved it. And I had the opportunity to move into a full-time position working at A Cloud Guru, teaching people about the cloud and how to become certified. So I've been with A Cloud Guru for the last 2 years. I'm just working in a role that I love because I'm really able to help people on their journey in tech. So that's the short version.
Great, thank you very much. I really do like A Cloud Guru. I think it's a great site. They're very concise and to the point. So
yeah, we're all about helping people, so that's why I'm there.
Yeah, it's great. But that's quite a lot. Within that, you seem to have been able to transition very smoothly. So let's talk about what's happened in between. So as you graduated from college, you must have had the feeling like every other student, oh, what am I going to do? There's this company I really want to work for. What opportunities are there for me, kind of thing. So how did your first opportunity come about? Was it like a graduate scheme kind of application or?
Yeah. So the college that I went to, they actually had a center that helped seniors find jobs. So they had companies to come on site and interview the students. So I was blessed enough to actually have a job before I graduated from college.
Okay.
And I actually had several job offers, some that paid more money than the offer that I accepted. And, you know, some people at that time, they were like, why would you want to accept less money when there's this company that's willing to pay you more? And for me, it really boiled down to what I loved or what I would enjoy. So, for example, the high paying job was more around like systems administration. And to me, some people love that. To me, that's boring. The lower job offer was in web development and building websites. And so for me, that was fun. And so I find really to be successful in tech, it's not always about the money. It's about your passion, what you enjoy. And when it's something that you enjoy, it makes it easier, and it allows you to stick with it and really give more than what you would give to something that you don't really enjoy.
I'm with you. So when you moved to, for example, Chick-fil-A, was that also an easy transition, or?
From a technology perspective, it was an easy transition because I was doing Java at Delta and I started doing Java at Chick-fil-A. I think the hardest thing for me was just having the courage to actually make that move. Because like I said, I'd been with Delta for 6 years, pretty stable job, apart from the bankruptcy. You know, I made the cut. They didn't lay me off when they laid off all the low performing people. So I felt, you know, confident for the time being that I would have a job and that I would really have to work a lot of overtime and just help the company not go into bankruptcy. So for me to actually leave that job, go to a 3-month contract position where I did not have health benefits. So there was a time where my family and I had small kids at the time, we didn't have health care. And so it was just a big step for me to leave that for the unknown. And I would just say from that, sometimes you have to step out on faith and just believe in yourself. And like I said, when I decided to leave Delta, everybody thought I was crazy. My husband at the time, he was not happy with the decision. My parents kind of questioned me, but I just knew that, one, it was something that I needed to do. I needed to leave Delta, and that I know 3 months, like after 3 months, you don't have a job. Looking back on it, that was kind of crazy. But it worked out. And like I said, sometimes you just have to step out on faith. So that was really the hardest part for me. It wasn't the technology transition, but it was just stepping out into the unknown.
I'm with you. And you mentioned being around at the beginning of Java and realizing it will take off. Is there any technology or language you feel like that about now?
Definitely the cloud. So when you hear people talk about AWS or Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or GCP, Google Cloud Platform, the cloud has really revolutionized IT. It's revolutionized how we build systems, how we architect systems, and how we deploy systems. And if there's anything that people out there should learn, it's definitely the cloud.
I'm with you. And now, would you say a university degree matters in terms of getting a job within tech?
No, definitely not, especially with the cloud. So the entry point to the cloud, I would always recommend AWS, just because I'm a huge fan of AWS. And you really start, I guess, at the lowest level. It's just where you learn about the different concepts of the cloud and all of the different services. And in order to do that, you don't need a 4-year degree. And then you work your way up, earning certifications, and then working, I call it on side projects, where you actually have hands-on experience and you're able to show what you've developed or delivered. And doing that, you definitely don't need a 4-year degree to become successful at, being a cloud developer or a cloud engineer or anything like that.
What would you say the initial step is then? Because there's a lot of fundamentals, for example, around like networking and subnetting, etc. If you come from a tech background, you kind of have those fundamentals and understand what protocols are, etc. But if you're coming from a blank canvas and then learning AWS, what do you suggest where should they go before that?
Right. So if you're new to tech and you're just learning AWS, I would recommend that you start with, there's a certification called AWS Cloud Certified Cloud Practitioner. So it's the very entry level certification, and it's meant for people either in business or people with no tech experience. And you start there. That teaches you the basics. It teaches you about databases and then the database services on AWS. It teaches you about networks and then the networking services on AWS like VPC. So it really starts at the beginning. And then once you master that and you've earned your CCP certification, at that point, think about a specialty area. So within AWS, there are several different, I guess, paths that you can take. You mentioned networking, there's security, there's databases, there's machine learning. And so you really have to figure out what you like and what you enjoy, and then try to take that path as a specialty area. And there are a lot of courses out there that teach you about those different areas, and each area has its own certification. And so that's my recommendation for someone that's new to tech and they want to learn more about the cloud.
Okay. So moving on, why do you think it is rare to find Black female engineers in tech? Or disproportionate, should I say?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons. So one, they don't see anyone that looks like them. Honestly, when we think about tech, it is a white male dominated industry. And so when I work a lot with young girls trying to expose them to tech for that reason. I want them to see someone that looks like them doing this role. And so that's one reason why you don't see a lot of Black women in tech. We don't reach them early enough, and then there's no one that looks like them. And then also it just boils down to the society that we live in. The society is filled with sexism and racism, and IT is no different.
Okay. And you mentioned in one of your talks having to prove yourself over and over. And even for me growing up, that was a thing that my grandma instilled in me, that you would have to do that and work 10 times as hard, etc. So how do you handle that situation in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely in my role, in all of the positions where I've worked, I've always felt like I had to prove myself. And so that's what I do. Like, I prove myself and I just blow everybody else out of the water.
Yeah.
And it's funny now, looking back over my career, that because I've done that, I've had to do that so many times. It's just now a part of how I work. It's like a part of my work ethic. So my work ethic, I'm always going to go above and beyond, because that's what I've had to do. Like, I've had to do that in order to prove myself. And like last week, I was having a conversation with a colleague, and he called me an overachiever. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not really an overachiever. It's just who I am, because that's who I've had to be in order to have a successful career in IT.
I'm with you. I think that's a trait that a lot of successful people adapt. Have you ever felt that it's kind of unfair, or opportunities have missed you for such reasons?
Oh yeah, it's definitely unfair. It's not right, but like it's the situation. And like later on in my career, whenever I noticed those situations, like I would speak up. Earlier in my career, I didn't feel comfortable talking about certain things, I would just kind of be quiet about it and just deal with it. But now in my career, if I see things like that, I'll definitely call it out. Or when I see other people being treated unfairly, I'll call it out. I remember there was one circumstance at one of my prior employers where we had an African American male who wanted to step into a more technical leadership role, and he was told no, that he wasn't technical enough.
Yeah.
And then maybe 3 months later, someone, a white male that was probably 5 years his junior, was put into that leadership position and given a mentor so that he would be successful. And I called that out. I'm like, well, why wasn't he offered that same opportunity? Like, there's no reason, given his experience, given his performance, like there's no excuse for things like that. So I found as I moved up into leadership, I had more of a voice to speak out against certain things that I see.
I'm with you. So how did that work out for you? One of the questions I did have for you is, what is it like being a Black woman in the boardroom? So I guess that's a perfect example of a time where you had to handle a certain situation.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of courage to be able to speak out against things that you don't agree with, especially when you're usually the only one, the only Black person or the only woman that like speaks out against those things. I think because I've been in the industry so long, because I'm comfortable in my skin, and I always joke and I tell people, I don't know at what age, but once I reached a certain age, I just really stopped caring what everybody else thought about me. And it was just like so freeing that, like, if I have something to say or if I see something that's wrong, I'm just going to say it. And so, yeah, it just takes a lot of courage to be able to speak out against certain things. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So next question. Why would you say there's a lack of Black-owned tech businesses in general, not just the US?
Well, I would say that's related to, so when we look at startup companies and how a lot of them like receive or they need funding, like venture capital funding in order to succeed, like the stats on that, like the amount of money going to Black founders or founders of color, it's really low. And I think that is one of the reasons why, a lot of Black startups may fail, because they're not able to receive the funding like their counterparts. And I thought about this, like I've heard stories about Black founders where they would actually hire a white male to serve as the face or the spokesperson for the company in order for them to receive funding. And I just think it should not be that way.
Yeah, that is definitely, even in the UK, that is definitely a thing. So how do you think we go about changing that? Because the funding is there. Is it the lack of knowledge of how we access the funding, or would people rather give the funding to other groups?
I think it's both, actually. Sometimes we just don't know what's available, what's out there. And then on the flip side, people have biases. They have ideas of what they think someone in tech should look like, or what a successful person in tech should look like. And, not to say that they are intentionally biased. Sometimes people, they just don't know. I mean, sometimes they are doing it on purpose. But I think it's just an awareness on that side that you have biases, and you should really fix that.
Definitely. And where should any founders or entrepreneurs go to start to look for funding or venture capitalists that may be willing to hear them out?
That's a good question. I know I've really worked a lot with AWS. So they have programs where they actually fund startups. And then they also have programs where they reserve money specifically for diverse founders. And so if you have a cloud solution, and really every solution that you build should be running in the cloud. So I would start with like the AWS Startups Founder program. And for that program, I've served as a mentor as well, just helping founders launch their product ideas. So that's where I would start.
Okay. And taking it back to the tech side of things, your SAM machine learning model, can you tell us a bit about that? I thought that was really cool. Just for everybody watching, it's a machine learning algorithm that predicts, that reduces racial profiling.
Yeah, so I developed SAM, that was 2017. And so for me, I wanted to, so I told you about my journey into Java, but I didn't really tell you about my journey into machine learning. So probably 5 years ago, I decided that like machine learning was the next great technology that I needed to learn. And for me, I learn best by doing. And so I came up with the idea for SAM based on the movie Minority Report. So that was a movie starring Tom Cruise. Can't remember when it came out, but it was a while ago. But in that movie, they have this concept called pre-crime. And it's where a person is arrested right before they commit the crime because the police officer uses psychic technology to know that they're about to commit a crime. And so I said, it would be really cool if I could create pre-crime using machine learning. So that was my first machine learning project. And I needed data whenever you're working with machine learning. So basically what machine learning is all about is where a computer studies past data, trying to find trends and patterns that it will then use to inform future decisions. And so with machine learning, you need data. And I searched and searched and searched and could not find really any police departments or government agencies here in the US that actually made their like arrest reports and records available. But luckily in the UK, I found crime data for the UK. So it was the stop and search data. And it gave details like this stop led to an arrest versus this stop did not lead to an arrest. And it gave the location, time of day, information about the person, race, gender, and all of that. And so I used that data to feed or create SAM. And so SAM, when I was building it, and you have to forgive me, I always, whenever I'm dealing with artificial intelligence, I'll say he or she or like, yeah. And my daughter, so I have like several Alexa devices throughout my home. And whenever I talk about Alexa, I'll say she, and my daughter's like, don't you mean it? I'm like, no, Alexa's a real person. So Sam is a real person. So when I fed that data to Sam, I intentionally excluded race because as an African-American person building technology, I don't believe race should be used by police departments to determine if a person is likely to commit a crime. And so I made the decision as the developer of SAM to exclude race, to make the program less, I guess, biased against race. And that's something I always try to talk to people about, building machine learning programs. Like you as the developer, you have an ethical and moral obligation to make sure that what you're developing does not negatively impact a person's life. So for example, when I was building a Java web application, Delta said, we need to build a booking application. As a developer, I say, sure, I'll build it. Now, if a police department comes and says, we need you to build something that helps us predict crime and we want you to include race, as the developer, I'm not going to say, sure, I'll build that. I'm going to push back. And whenever you're working in the artificial intelligence and machine learning space as a developer, I believe you have an obligation to do that, because machine learning is used all over the place. A lot of people don't even realize how prevalent it is. So it's used in hiring decisions. It's used to determine if someone is going to get a loan. It's used at the airport. It's used by policing agencies. It's used in healthcare. And so we really have to work hard to make sure that what we build lives up to the promise of machine learning, which is to build a solution where human bias is no longer present, because it's a machine that's making the decision.
And talking about machines making decisions, what's your opinion on AI and biotech?
Biotech, I haven't really worked a lot with biotechnology.
Just the ethics around it.
Yeah, it's a very slippery slope. Anytime we talk about machine learning and ethics, right now, I don't see a lot of accountability. And to me, that's the issue. We have people building these machine learning programs, working with biotechnology, and putting solutions out there that gain a lot of attention and a lot of use, but I don't see like the checks and balances where someone holds these organizations accountable, or someone either like gives them the stamp of approval saying, yes, this is an ethical system. Yes, it's free of bias. I don't see anyone out there doing that, and that to me is dangerous.
I'm with you. And also in one of your talks, I saw you mentioned you wish you could rule the world or something when you was younger. So if you did rule the world, what would you do?
If I could rule the world?
Yeah, what would be one thing you would do?
If I could rule the world, what would I do? I would make, and it's not related to technology, I would make everyone love their neighbors as they love themselves. And I think that would get rid of everything, really. Racism, sexism, all the isms would be gone. Yeah, that's what I would do if I had the power.
Yeah, well, so that is a very good one. And just before we close, could you tell us a bit more about women entering and staying in tech, and the Women Who Code projects that you work on?
Sure. So there's an organization called WEST, and it stands for Women Entering and Staying in Tech. And it's an awesome organization that I volunteer my time with. Because for me, there have been like several instances where I actually considered leaving tech, just because of the challenges that I faced, and just the sheer exhaustion sometimes of it all. And so I know firsthand what women go through. And so I wanted to just give back and really help the younger generation of women coming up. And it's an awesome organization. I've worked with several women, like women just coming back from maternity leave, or women just getting started in tech, or women wanting to like fast track their promotions. So it's a great organization. So I would highly recommend it to any woman that's in tech. So that's WEST. And then Women Who Code is another organization that I'm a part of. And I remember when I joined it way back when, and I attended the first meeting. And for me, it was literally mind-blowing, because I could look around a room and I saw other women, I guess other nerds that were just like me, geeking out over tech. And I'm like, wow, like this is so cool. And so for that organization, I decided to volunteer and give my time back. And last year we did, and it's all recorded, we did a machine learning hackathon where I taught 3 workshops leading up to the hackathon. So really just trying to teach everybody about machine learning and how to use the technology to build an app. And then we had a hackathon where all of the teams actually use what they learned to build the app. So whenever I can volunteer with organizations like that, I do.
Well, that sounds really cool. So how could people over here in the UK contact you?
Sure. So I am definitely on LinkedIn. And, most people, when they say my LinkedIn URL is like Kesha Williams, no, that's not my LinkedIn URL. My LinkedIn URL is actually Java Rockstar Kesha. Now, I don't know why I did that. It's too late to change it, but that's where you can find me. I'm also on Twitter, and it's Kesha, Kesha. There's no I in Kesha. Don't let anybody trick you. Kesha Wills, Willz, or Z, as y'all say in the UK. Kesha Wills, and that's Twitter and Instagram.
Cool. Okay, then. Thank you very much, Kesha, for appearing on our show. Yeah, it's great having you. I think everybody can get a little something from this interview. And as I said, it's great to see a Black woman at the highest levels in tech. And that's also available to contact, is sharing knowledge. You can find Kesha on A Cloud Guru. And if you check out her LinkedIn, she's got a ton of publications and other stuff that she's doing. Cool.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Take care.